Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to do some absolute value equations here with Mixed-Wix. So the first question I have for you is, what do we already know about absolute value? I'm sure some of you in your head have just said it's the distance away from zero. That's the actual definition. If you said something like, I know it's always positive or zero, that's true because distance is zero, or distance is always positive, or it doesn't exist at all. You can't measure distance in a negative with a negative number. You wouldn't say I stay negative 6 feet away from you. That doesn't make any sense. And I'm sure you remember that they also have these brackets here. When we have absolute value, they're your absolute value brackets. So I'm going to go on. We're going to show you the absolute value of 5. What does this really mean? It means what is the distance from 5 to 0? Well, let's look at it on a number line. So if we were to mark 5, and let's figure out the distance from 5 to 0, we could simply count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the absolute value of 5 is 5. What about for negative 5? So this is really asking, what is the distance from negative 5 to 0? Okay, well, here's your number line again. Mark negative 5, and let's count from negative 5 to 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the absolute value of negative 5 is 5. However, in math, we're going to ask you it a different way. So this way is asking you is the absolute value of what number is equal to 5. Now, this is algebra, so we don't use question marks. We are going to use an x there instead. But it's the same question. The absolute value of what number x is equal to 5. So we're actually looking for x equals. What is that number? How can we go about it? Well, we already know that the absolute value of 5 is equal to 5. So that could be one of my answers. And we just did the absolute value of negative 5 is equal to 5. So that can be one of my answers. So why the heck is the absolute value of some number equal to 5? Why can that answer be either 5 or negative 5? Why can there be two answers when everything I've ever solved before has only had one? Okay, let's take a look at the graph and I'll explain it to you. So this is the graph of the absolute value of x. If you were to draw a line at 5, you'll see that it crosses at 2 points. You see those 2 points there in orange. And those 2 points match up with our numbers negative 5 and 5. And that's why the absolute value of some number is, it can be either negative 5 or 5. They're both 5, okay, because those lines cross in those ways. So this concludes our statement that the absolute value equations can have up to 2 solutions. I'm underlining up to 2 solutions right now because it can also have 0 or 1. For example, if we look at the graph again, if I were to draw a line here at 0, I'm only going to cross one time right at that orange dot. Okay. However, if I were to draw a line down here at negative 4, I never cross that absolute value function at all. So that would be an example where there's 0 solutions or no solutions. Now I have the absolute value of some number is equal to 5. This is the same thing, but I'm going to show you a little bit differently on how to solve this and how to go through the steps. So actually what we did here was we split this equation up, this absolute value, into 2 separate pieces. We drop the absolute value, and then we're going to set them equal to the positive and negative of this number here. So I'm going to put a positive 5 and a negative 5 in here. And that's how we got our 2 answers. Let's try this with a harder example. Here I have the absolute value of 2x minus 3 is equal to 15. I'm going to split this up into 2, okay? I'm going to bring this side down on both. Then I'm going to drop my absolute values. And now I'm going to set them equal to this 15. I'm going to set it equal to a positive and a negative. So I'm going to pop a positive 15 and a negative 15 in there. And now I have 2 separate equations that I know how to solve. So I'm going to go ahead and solve them one at a time, maybe even two. So I'm going to go ahead and solve them right now. So I'm going to add 3 to both sides. So I want to get x alone. When I do that, I get 2x minus 18 over here. On the other side, I get 2x minus 12. 2x is equal to minus 12. And now I'm going to divide by 2. On the left side there, I get x is equal to 9. And on the right side there, I'm going to get x is equal to negative 6. So now I have 2 answers. However, I need to figure out if they're right. So in order to figure out if they work, I have to substitute them back in, because sometimes when you're working with absolute values, they can give you false answers that don't really work. And you'll see that. Okay, so we're going to plug 9 in to the left side, and we're going to plug negative 6 into the other side, and we're just going to simplify. So 2 times 9 is 18. Simplify again, 18 minus 3 is 15. The absolute value of 15 is 15, so this one checks out for us. On the other side, 2 times negative 6 is going to give me negative 12. Negative 12 minus negative 3 is negative 15. And the absolute value of negative 15 is 15, so this one checks out for me. So both of those answers do work, and they didn't trick me this time. Here's one that's a little bit harder. So this one's a little more confusing because we first need to do one step, which is isolate the absolute value brackets. So I want us to take a second and pause to show you something quickly. If I didn't have absolute value here and I just had 3 instead of the absolute value, if I just had x minus 5 is equal to 10, what would my first step be here if I wanted to get this x alone? I would add 5 to both sides. That's right. So actually what we're going to do in this whole thing is we're going to add 5 to both sides because I want to get this piece here alone. I want to isolate this here. So we're going to go ahead and show you that in the next couple slides. So first I'm going to add 5 to both sides. That's going to give me 3 times the absolute value of negative 4x minus 1 is equal to 15. I still need to get rid of this 3 guy up here because I want the absolute value to be by itself. So now I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides. And now I have the absolute value of negative 4x minus 1 is equal to 5. So now I'm in a position where the absolute value is by itself, and we've done a problem like this before. So I can set up my 2 equations and solve. I want one to be equal to a positive of this number, and I want one to be equal to a negative of that number. So split them up. I'm going to split up the positive 5 on one side, negative 5 on the other, and I'm going to bring down within my absolute value without the absolute value symbols. And now I can solve both of those equations on their own. So I add 1 to both sides. That gives me negative 4x is equal to 6. Divide by negative 4 on both sides, and x is equal to negative 1.5. Other equation, add 1 to both sides. That gives me negative 4x is equal to negative 4. Divide by negative 4 on both sides, and now I have x is equal to 1. But we have to go back. Oh, and I have these 2 answers here. But are they true? Do they work? Step 3 is check for extraneous solutions. Make sure that these answers are going to work. So now I have to plug them back into my original piece. So I'm going to take this original guy all the way up here. Always take the one that you saw in ink on the paper. And I'm going to plug in my answer to this for x. And I'm going to solve. So negative 4 times negative 1.5 is 6. Keep on going down. 6 minus 1 is 5. The absolute value of 5 is 5. 3 times 5 is 15. 15 minus 5 is 10. And that checks out for me. 10 is equal to 10. Other side now. All right, I'm going to plug the 1 into my original piece all the way up here for x. I'm going to write that down here. And now I'm going to simplify. So negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. Negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5. The absolute value of negative 5 is 5. 3 times 5 is 15. 15 minus 5 is 10, and 10 is equal to 10, and that one checks out for me. So it's true that both of these answers actually work for me. No extraneous solutions. We're going to try a harder one now. Okay, this one's a little harder because we have variables on both sides. This is a little bit different of a problem. We still want to isolate the absolute value, but in this problem, I already have the absolute value isolated. There's nothing on the outside of those. So I can just keep on going. Step 2, set up 2 equations and solve. This is where this one gets tricky. I want to have a positive of this side. It's not just a number anymore. So I'm going to carry the whole thing down positive on one side, and the other side I want it to be negative. So I'm going to multiply, put a negative on the outside because I want to multiply everything inside by a negative. I want to make everything negative. And I'm also going to carry it down what's in my absolute value. And now I have to solve. Not as complicated as you think. You've seen these kind of problems before. Solve on the left side, minus 3x from both sides. That's going to give me negative 1x plus 5 is equal to 4. Minus 5 from both sides, negative 1x is equal to negative 1. Divide by negative 1 on both sides, x is equal to 1. Other one, I actually have a negative 1 there. I replaced that negative with a negative 1 just so that we see for distribution purposes. So I'm going to distribute that negative 1 to my inside. And now I have 2x plus 5 is equal to negative 3x minus 4. And now I can add 3 to x to both sides. That gives me 5x plus 5 is equal to negative 4. Minus 5 from both sides. That gives me 5x is equal to negative 9. And divide by 5 on both sides. X is equal to negative 1.8. Now, are those answers going to work for me? Will negative 1 and negative 1.8 both work? Let's check step 3 and try. So check for extraneous solutions, plug them back in. So I plugged them all in, I did all the work, and we are going to go through and see what happens. Make sure that you're plugging the 1 in for both x's on both sides. You don't want any x's left in here. So 2 times 1 is 2, 3 times 1 is 3. Keep on solving. 2 plus 5 is 7, 3 plus 4 is 7. Absolute value of 7 is 7. That one checks out. Other one. So first step, 2 times negative 1.8 is negative 3.6. 3 times negative 1.8 is negative 5.4. Keep on going. Add this side, we get 1.4. Add this side, we get negative 1.4. You can drop those absolute values, and 1.4 is not equal to negative 1.4. So what does this mean? X is equal to 1 is a solution. However, x is equal to negative 1.8 is an extraneous solution and it is not going to work for me. So this is actually the solution, and this one is not at all. So this is all you put for your answer. You just circle this and keep on going.